Picture a territory the size of Colorado, mostly desert, with massive phosphate mines and rich fishing waters. This is the Western Sahara, a region on Africa's Atlantic coast that has been locked in one of the world's longest-running conflicts. Yet, it remains largely unknown to most people. In 2025, the dispute over Western Sahara marks its 50th anniversary. And while there is still no resolution in sight, a few recent developments have breathed new life into this long-frozen conflict. In 2020, President Donald Trump recognized Moroccan sovereignty over the territory in a move that shifted diplomatic dynamics. More recently, the growing global demand for phosphates, which are essential to making fertilizer, has increased the economic stakes. Also, the end of a 30-year ceasefire in November 2020 highlighted the fragility of the situation. And finally, rising geopolitical competition across North Africa has drawn major powers into the region. The Western Sahara sits between Morocco, Algeria, and Mauritania. Today, Morocco controls approximately 75% of the territory, with the remaining portion held by the Polisario Front as the self-proclaimed Sahrawi Democratic Republic, or SADR. Algeria, sharing a border with the Western Sahara, has been the Polisario's primary supporter and hosts SADR's government in exile. Before that, for nearly a century, the Western Sahara was a Spanish colony. In 1975, as Spain prepared to withdraw, both Morocco and Mauritania claimed the territory based on historical ties. Morocco's claim was based on pre-colonial history, when Moroccan rulers exercised varying degrees of control over parts of the Western Sahara. Their primary argument centered on traditional ties between the Sultan of Morocco and some Sahrawi tribes through the Bay'ah, or Pledge of Allegiance, that certain tribes gave to the Sultan. Mauritania's claims were based on different cultural and historical grounds. Many Sahrawi nomadic tribes migrated between what is now the Western Sahara and Mauritania, with some tribes having stronger ties to Mauritanian populations, especially the Moorish communities that share the Hassaniya Arabic dialect and cultural practices. The Moors, a mixed Arab-Berber ethnic group that settled North Africa between the 11th and 17th century, often maintained nomadic lifestyles with tribal connections extending beyond modern borders, complicating territorial claims in the region. When the competing claims were brought before the International Court of Justice, the court acknowledged the historical and cultural ties, but ruled they were insufficient to establish sovereignty, affirming that the Sahrawi people should be allowed to determine their own future. Despite the ruling, Morocco proceeded with its plans to claim the territory. In November 1975, it organized the Green March, sending 350,000 civilians across the border, followed by military forces to symbolically claim the land. Shortly thereafter, Spain signed the Madrid Accords with Morocco and Mauritania, transferring administrative control of the Western Sahara to the two countries. The Sahrawi independent movement, led by the Polisario Front, resisted this move and began to fight both Morocco and Mauritania. The Polisario then, backed by Algeria and to some extent Libya's Muammar Gaddafi, declared the establishment of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, a government in exile. With the fighting ongoing, thousands of Sahrawis fled to Algeria, establishing refugee camps that still exist today. By 1979, after several military defeats, Mauritania withdrew its claim to the territory, leaving Morocco in conflict with the Algeria-backed Polisario. Algeria's support for the Polisario stems from ideological and strategic interests. Ideologically, Algeria fought a long decolonization battle against France and has, as such, historically supported self-determination movements. Strategically, Algeria has an interest in keeping Morocco, against which it fought a border war in 1963, embroiled in conflict. The situation continued like this until 1991, when after 16 years of guerrilla warfare, the UN brokered a ceasefire on the promise of a referendum for the Sahrawi people to determine their future. This vote never materialized. Meanwhile, Morocco built the berm, a 1,700-mile wall fortified with military installations and minefields that physically divides the territory. Morocco controls the western portion, while the Polisario controls a sparsely populated eastern zone. West of the berm, over 5 decades, Morocco has invested billions in transforming the portion of the Western Sahara under its control. It developed modern urban centers in Laayoune and Dakhla, with ports and airports and highways, and created economic opportunities that have attracted Moroccan settlers, changing the demographics of the region. It integrated the territory into Moroccan banking, telecommunications, and transportation systems. And it developed phosphate mining operations and fishing industries that are now crucial to Morocco's economy. And it has been developing significant renewable energy projects, particularly wind and solar facilities. For Morocco, the Western Sahara represents not just a territory, but a multi-generational national project thoroughly integrated into its economic and political systems. East of the berm, the Polisario Front controls the area and oversees the refugee camps that Algeria hosts. These camps, where an estimated 175,000 Sahrawis have lived for decades, face harsh conditions with limited resources and dependency on international aid. Despite these challenges, the camps have developed their own governance structure and social services. Meanwhile, a younger generation of Sahrawis are growing increasingly frustrated with their circumstances, putting pressure on the Polisario leadership to show progress through negotiations or to return to armed conflict. Throughout these decades, the Polisario has maintained its position that only a referendum, including the independence option, will resolve the conflict. On the international stage, Algeria is still the Polisario's strongest supporter, consistently raising the Western Sahara issue in forums like the UN and the African Union. The Western Sahara is an important part of the long-held hostility between Morocco and Algeria, with tensions leading to diplomatic breaks multiple times, most recently in 2021. Because in 2020, the United States recognized Morocco's sovereignty over the Western Sahara as part of an agreement that included Morocco normalizing relations with Israel. This was a huge diplomatic win for Morocco. But Morocco has other powerful supporters, including France and Spain. The rest of the international community, however, is divided. So in this complex diplomatic landscape, the issue is at an impasse. The UN, which has mediated between the parties since 1976, including maintaining a peacekeeping mission, has failed to broker a resolution after numerous rounds of negotiations. And this deadlock remains because the gap between parties is so large. Whether the status of the region should be resolved by holding a referendum that includes independence as an option, or by giving Sahrawis autonomy under Moroccan sovereignty. Morocco and its backers support the latter, while the Polisario demands a referendum. Tensions periodically flare up, as they did in late 2020, when the ceasefire collapsed following a Polisario blockade of a key road, the Guerguerat border crossing, and Morocco's subsequent military response. A low-level intensity conflict has been going on since. The long-dormant conflict is once again challenging regional stability. So why should you care? The Western Sahara matters globally for several reasons. First is food. The territory produces phosphate, and Morocco ranks as one of the world's largest phosphate producers. With global food security challenges increasing, these resources affect agriculture worldwide. Second is geopolitics. Algeria and Morocco's rivalry has transformed the Western Sahara issue into a proxy conflict. Major powers, including the US, France, Russia, and China, have strategic interest in North Africa, including the Western Sahara. France has pledged investments worth billions of euros in renewable and port infrastructure. China is interested in expanding its fishing cooperation with Morocco into the territory and is exploring joint development of renewable energy ventures. This shows how a once frozen conflict can become a potential arena for economic competition. The third reason is regional stability. The unresolved conflict affects security across the Maghreb and Sahel regions, with the potential for escalation between Morocco and the Polisario, and the potential for radicalization as the issue festers. And a final reason this conflict is important is international norms. The situation tests fundamental principles of international relations: self-determination versus territorial integrity, the role of power politics versus international law, and the effectiveness of multilateral institutions. As the Western Sahara conflict reaches the half-century mark, several big questions remain unanswered. Who has the legitimate right to determine the territory's future? What roles should historical claims, current control, indigenous rights, and economic development play in any resolution? And more important, is a comprehensive solution still possible after 50 years of entrenchment? The Western Sahara may be a conflict most people have never heard of, but at its core are important questions about sovereignty, resources, and human rights that resonate worldwide.